Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Surah Bani Israel, chapter 17, verses 66 to 70 we will cover today. Man deserves respect and has potentials to achieve eminence. There is a verse, which is 70th verse, in which the respect for every child of Adam is mentioned. So we will expand it a bit for our benefit. These are the references. And this is our contact in case there is any query or question regarding this presentation or any of our previous presentations. Recap verses 61 to 65. The appearance of man on the world stage and the purpose of his finite existence on the planet has been the focus of attention since the time man has acquired metacognitive consciousness. If the Quran claims to be the book from Allah, then one expects it to provide a rational answer for the human mind to the query about the purpose of creation. Here the Quran describes an aspect of human creation in a metaphorical style, stating that Adam, representing mankind, had the ability to harness the forces of nature, that is Malaika, which were placed at his disposal to assist him through the struggles of life. However, Iblis, which represents his own emotive makeup, did not comply with the laws of Allah since he is provided with this choice to do so. So essentially, we went through it in some detail that Iblis is really the inner state of each human being. And we have to overcome these proclivities. Iblis does not agree with those latent potentials which are kept within man and wishes to go against the laws of Allah using his choice and intent, and thus presents his own line of thinking, which is noted in these verses. Then another facet of human emotions appears on the scene, which is termed as Shaitan, who has the potentials and proclivity to misguide others as well as his own self. Various signs of this misguidance are outlined. So Shaitan is with reference to our emotive state, which is unguided. Once we seek the guidance of the Quran, then this Shaitan disappears and our emotions are guided. And then these emotions are used for positive outcomes in life. Finally, it is made clear that man does not have to obey Iblis and Shaitan, and he can select whether to follow the guidance of the Quran with a view to live a better life. If he chooses to follow the path of the Quran, then he will reap its benefits in this life as well as in the life of the hereafter. Now, an overview of today's presentation. Here the Quran has referred to human efforts to seek the means of sustenance on planet Earth, for which he employs ships sailing across the oceans. We construct ships using the available resources on land and make use of our intellect and knowledge. This is part of the process of Rabubiyat, which is there to provide nourishment and development to mankind. And this is the physical side of it, which is mentioned in these verses, and we will go through them in some detail. During this process of making efforts by the use of ships and oceans, we draw the benefits of Allah's laws and sail across the waves safely by obeying these laws. However, instead of appreciating all the arrangements of sustenance made available on the earth for mankind, we do not reflect and pay attention to the higher purpose of life and thus display Kufr. Because all that is taking place within the physical sphere and from which we take benefits, we have to cognitively think about it. We have to analyze it and see that why these laws are working and why they are for our benefit and what it means as far as our goals of life are concerned. By observing the physical laws of Allah and by taking precautions, we manage to protect ourselves from storms and tornadoes, and this minimizing of risks makes it possible to undertake these journeys over land and sea repeatedly. All this is part of the planning of Allah in the domain of Khalq. Indeed, Allah has created each child of Adam deserving of respect and dignity, and this is the inviolable right of every individual as a human being. Man, by virtue of possessing choice and intent, has a superior status over many Allah's creations. Now, first verse of today's presentation, 1766. Allah's rahmat includes availability of means of transportation through oceans. Rabbukumul yusji lakumul fulka fil bahre litabtagu min fadlihi innahu kana bikum rahima. How trustworthy the law of Allah is, you see evidence of this every day in the physical domain. For example, you witness how huge ships laden with so much cargo sail around on the oceans so that you can pursue rizq, that is sustenance, via them. How worthy of trust and a cause of rahmat this law of His is for you. Now, further reflections on this verse. An important point to note is that when the Quran draws our attention towards the functioning of the physical laws and the way in which we draw benefits from their knowledge and application, it is in order to relate it to the higher purpose of our life on this planet. It is not to start praising Allah and then do nothing on the path of deen. That amounts to wasting our cognitive potentials. Very important as students of the Quran, whenever we see things in the physical domain and His laws working, we should come to some conclusion that how should we make use of them for the benefit of mankind. Because without making a benefit out of all these physical laws, and just praising means nothing, because Quran is asking us to be creative. In order to appreciate what Allah has done, we have to make use of all these resources which are placed for us on the planet. Every verse of the Quran needs to point our intellect in the direction of Rabubiyat, and that is important. Wherever the attribute of Rab appears, our attention must go in that direction. That what kind of benefits for humanity are implicit in this particular verse. And if we fail to pick up these important signs, then essentially we are simply reading the Quran without comprehending its purpose to create a new self within us. Because the whole point is to expand our vision, to expand our outlook, and we should become very insightful and then be creative. Here, starting the verse with the mention of your Rabb, the Quran has informed us that what is coming next is pointing to a carefully planned world and universe, perfectly made and ready for the man possessing choice and intent. Water, which covers about 2/3 of surface of the planet, is for equitable use as a means of sustenance for the whole of mankind. And we can see that it is addressed to every human being. It is not addressed to one part of the world or another part of the world. All human beings residing on Allah's planet. Few more comments on this verse. It is important for us to think, search, and then make an effort for the acquisition of the bounties and favors placed on the planet for the whole of mankind. And this is what is noted in the verse, لِتَبْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. We can look at fadl in Lugatul Quran, and it has wide set of meanings. We witness clearly in the word that those nations which are advanced in scientific knowledge and technology and then make efforts in this respect are far ahead in terms of exploiting the earth's resources. And this is based on evidence. For example, the Western nations and now China, Russia, and other nations as well, whoever are making efforts, they are developing the earth's resources for their own benefit. And the students of the Quran or Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen will bring them out for the good of everyone on the planet. They are very rich nations in the world. However, they also exploit the natural resources in the lands of other nations who are weak and backward. Why do they do this? The Quran makes it clear that unbridled intellects will always do this, as these are the traits of Iblis and Shaitan, who will establish such a system. It is the duty of the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen to rise up and establish the system of Deen as a model and to demonstrate to mankind that there is a better way to live this finite life. Though it is a repetition, but it's good to repeat, and the Quran does repeat many of its aspects and also adds some more to these aspects. Then concluding the verse with the attribute, Innahu kana bikum rahima. Nourishment and development encompasses both the physical side and the aspect of the self, for all of you without exception. And we know Rahim means that nourishment and development for which all these resources are provided. And Quran also helps to develop ourselves, and that is part of this attribute of Rahim as well. And we as human beings have also to manifest this attribute by acquiring all those attributes and characteristics which the Quran has mentioned frequently. Now let us go to the next verse, 1767. Follow the laws of Allah and not of any human being. وَإِذَا مَسَّكُمُ الضُّرُّ فِي الْبَحْرِ ضَلَّ أَن تَدْعُونَ إِلَّا إِيَّهُ فَلَمَّا نَجَّكُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ أَرَدْتُمْ وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ كَفُورًا. When your ship keeps moving securely and safely, then you bring hundreds of other thoughts to mind, yet do not feel any need whatsoever to pay attention to this aspect, that all this is taking place according to the law of Allah. And this is a fact, that how many of us, when we are driving car, for example, or flying in an aeroplane or go out in a ship or use all these laws, how many of us look at this, that all of this is working because of the laws created by Allah, and there is a higher aim, there is a higher purpose of our life. But when that ship becomes stricken by some trouble, then at that time only those solutions become useful which are adopted according to the law of Allah. Any solution counter to this offered by another power which you used to call upon during the state of security cannot be effective. After this, when you reach dry land securely and safely, then you transgress this reality. I.e., security and safety can only be achieved by living life according to the laws of Allah. The fact is that man, if he only follows his emotions and thoughts by leaving the wahi of Allah to one side, is very ungrateful. And over here, the word is used kufr, which means that we become ungrateful. We do not follow the laws of Allah, and we only follow our unbridled desires. Further elaboration of this verse. In this verse, our attention is drawn to the aspect of kufr, which unguided minds display on a regular basis in the world. If human beings do not follow the physical laws knowingly or unknowingly, for example, fire will always burn, whether we know it or do not know it. They will face the consequences of doing so at some point in the future. And that is a serious thing, that when we are living in this world, because we are also following physical laws, and if we fail to observe those physical laws, then we are going to suffer at some point in time. For example, if the ships or boats are overloaded, then these may capsize during stormy weather. And though it is rare, but we do see it particularly in underdeveloped world. Here, calling on others besides Allah means not following his laws, which are well known in the world of 2024. And developed nations have in fact constructed detailed risk management strategies and quality control procedures which have reduced these incidents and accidents in the oceans across the world. We witness the tremendous naval activity in terms of movement of cargo, cruise ships, and even warships, yet barely any incident is reported due to adverse weather conditions. It is because safety standards have gone very high, and human beings, particularly in the developed world, are very conscious of it. And they have also some kind of an accountability that if any of their own citizens suffers, then there is a lot of inquiry and people are held accountable. Bringing back safely means that after employing the laws of Allah, we need to think that, is this the purpose of life? Just consuming the physical means of sustenance, passing the years, aging, and then die. So these are the aspects which Quran is also drawing our attention to, that don't just do things, but think about it, that what is the purpose of our life and what goal we have set up for ourselves. Are we thinking that the life will end with death, or we think there is a possibility of another life after death? So all these aspects then motivate us to think on wider issues, not just merely using the conveniences of life and then leave this world. Is there more to this human life? Is this world meant to be conflict-ridden while a minority sit on most of the wealth by depriving the majority? Where is the humanity in this? Few more comments on this verse. By concluding the verse by stating وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ كَفُورًا. In a narrow sense, here this will mean that by going against the physical laws, man suffers and his life, especially the collective one, becomes full of high risks. We frequently witness that when the upkeep of the infrastructure in a country is neglected, then accidents and mishaps increase. It also means that by following man-made laws, human systems gradually decline and then lead to ruin and destruction through serious errors of judgment. Because human beings, they start sliding towards decline. If they see that, for example, if people at the helm of affairs in any council or any city or in a country think that people are accepting some of the faults in the infrastructure and are not protesting against it, then they take it for granted and things start going bad to worse. However, there is a wider connotation as well, where the Quran has stated, Dalla man tad'una illa iyahu, i.e., by obeying those other than Allah, that is His laws and values, the human psyche becomes contaminated, and despite acquiring supremacy in the physical domain, man suffers due to making the choice for Kufr. So this is also part of Kufr, that we disobey obvious aspects of, for example, risk management, and do not take safety measures. And as a result, then human beings suffer. The outer world changes when humans controlling the world change their psyche. Next point is, just as a reminder, kufr means to hide and to cover. A kafir is a person whose body is hidden in armor. A farmer is a kafir as he hides seeds in the soil. I thought to give some aspects of kufr taking from Lugat al-Quran. The night is also called kafir as it hides everything under its darkness. It is used as the opposite of mu'min. Thus, the absence of all those attributes which are found in a mu'min, and that will be kufr. The one who wishes to hide the concrete realities of life, to deny truth, who hides his potentials and does not wish to bring these out, also does this to others. From the meaning of hiding, the meaning of rejecting is also implied. For example, rejection of the values of the Quran. And for further details, we can look in Lugat al-Quran. Let us go to the next verse, 1768. Man simply cannot live life outside the domain of Allah's laws. Afa mintum an yaksifa bikum janibal barre aw yursila alaykum hasiban summa la tajidu lakum wakila. You emerge from the water safely onto dry land and think that you have exited the domain of the laws of Allah, even though His laws are encompassing the whole of the universe, and whoever contravenes them wherever he is seized there and then. He can destroy you on a piece of dry land in the same way as in water. If a storm in the ocean could become the cause of destruction, then here a sandstorm and tornado can create the means for your destruction, from which you cannot find anyone to save you. Over here in this verse, Quran has drawn some examples from our day-to-day living, particularly those related to ships and boats plying on oceans and high seas. So we experience that, or at least we also read these in newspapers and also reported in media. Expanding this verse a bit further, if we look at the translations of these verses, that is 67 to 69, it appears as if Allah is out to get us and send some kind of trouble and hardship in the form of disasters on us. Not at all. And this is why it happens that under the religious domain, people start doing du'as and supplications rather than looking into it, that what mistakes they have made and which physical laws they have disobeyed. These verses need to be analyzed in the light of the laws of Allah and on the available evidence of these laws functioning in the human world as noted in their meanings. And this is what the West has done. They have moved away from the religious belief system, and through science they learned all these laws and used these for their own benefit. And of course, to control the rest of the world, because these laws have given them extreme power. According to the law of buoyancy, a needle will sink, while a container ship carrying hundreds of tons of cargo will not. Once we understand the laws functioning in the world and the universe, we can not only apply these to obtain benefits, but also can direct our attention to the order and scaling around us, which can aid us in seeking guidance for ourselves and for the higher purpose of life. And in today's world, with so much information available on internet, we should look at these aspects as and when we get time. Knowledge of these laws leads to improved risk management in our life, and thus we then avoid taking shortcuts. And that is important because death through accidents is a terrible thing, because we have taken away the opportunity of living a bit longer and possibly finding guidance from the Quran from that person. So these accidents and mishaps should be avoided, and virtually we can create a world where there should be no accident if people observe these laws and take precautions. And health and safety measures, now there is an extensive literature on that, and this is practiced in all those countries which are fairly developed. For example, the whole of the manufacturing industry benefits from quality control, and all these ships undergo stringent checks to keep these ocean worthy. And it's a fact. All of these, there are drills for that, and there are rehearsals done, as well as a continuous checks are done on every aspect of a ship. This is the reason that we rarely witness any serious mishaps, even under extreme weather conditions. For example, violent storms and tornadoes. More reflections on this verse. Not only this, but it has led us towards ever more discoveries and inventions, as greater technology is being added to the ocean liners, which are becoming larger and larger, with all kinds of modern sensors and gadgets helping to keep them going safely from one destination to another. For example, in modern airliners and of course sea liners, if we go, the thought of these suffering any accident doesn't cross our mind. And it's so rare in the world that if an aeroplane or ship suffers, the media across the world covers it and let everyone know. And they also do extensive investigation in order to avoid any future mishap and learn lessons. While enjoying all these benefits of the physical laws, we have not yet directed our full attention to the higher purpose of life. And that is what is lacking at this point in time. And for that, we will need the Quran. The issue of recognizing the presence of a self within us and its need for development by following the laws related to it. For example, the law of requital and the law of respite, the permanent values which govern its development and further growth. The way this verse addresses this and its conclusion invite us to reflect profoundly on the way the planet is presented to us. And for example, it says, Summa la tajidu lakum wakila. Then there is no one to carry out your affairs for you, because all these affairs are being carried out by knowing those laws. If we relate this to other verses where, for example, we covered this verse previously, 1765, wa kafa bi rabbika wakila. Organize your affairs through Rabubiyat. It is all about changing the outlook by transforming our psyche, and then the outer world will start to change accordingly. And we should also look at this verse where Quran says that unless the psyche of a nation changes, the outer world will not change. Now, over here, what I've done is to make it a bit more interesting, I've included some photos to illustrate this aspect. For example, we can see this massive sea liner, and this is another one. And we should keep in mind that it is not only constructing these sea liners, which is a miracle in itself by following the physical laws, but the way the whole aspects of passengers are also managed. All these passengers who are of course rich and can afford to go on these liners, how they are accommodated, and how the entertainment is organized for them, how the food is organized for them over, for example, sometimes these are on the ocean for a couple of weeks or maybe more. So all this management is using human self, human intellect. And that is where we have to think very hard that Allah has given us that intellect which can firstly manufacture it, design it, manufacture it, and then manage their operation. And this is an aircraft carrier, and this is a cargo ship, an oil tanker, and of course an ambulance ship as well. So human beings have tremendous ability to utilize the resources of the earth. So all the problems which we see around the world can be very easily solved because the same intellect which can manufacture these ships and then manage their organization, planning, and administration side, the same intellect can also do better than what it is doing at present. All these ships are employing the laws of Allah. Their detailed organization and management involves human intellectual planning. And who has given us that intellect? And that comes from Allah. And Quran has pointed to this aspect as well in number of verses. These cognitive potentials are bestowed by Allah free to every child. So every human being has been given this brain, this intellect free. And we should utilize it for the good of mankind. Let us go to the next verse, 1769. We suffer harms in life by contravening the laws of Allah. Am amintum an yuidakum fihe taratan ukhra fayursila alaykum kasifan minar rihe fayugrikakum bima kafartum summa la tajidu lakum alayna bihi tabiya. Or do you think that once you have reached safety from a storm in the ocean, you have become safe and secure for all times? This is not true. Because what Quran is saying is that don't think that life is just hunky-dory and we don't have to think about solving problems and just minding our own business and to be oblivious of the problems around us. Can it not happen that when you set out on a voyage on the sea, then he sends a severe gale which may smash your boat and drown you in the sea because you ignored some clause of his law? This is what is called ingratitude and rejection of the law of Allah. At that time, there can be no such power which can pursue your case against that law or can question us. Expanding this verse further, continuing from the previous verse here, the Quran has added another dimension to this scenario of human behavior, where we live life focused on the physical laws alone. We take full benefits of these and come across winds, storms, and other natural events, but do not look beyond the immediate effects. Here the Quran says that we repeat many of our actions, but still our mind does not turn in the direction of the wider issues of life. For example, if our life is cut short due to some mishap or accident at sea or on land, or we witness some incident immediately around us or in the wider world, and these are reported daily in the news, and we think that all this happens to others, still we seldom question the man-made system and its values. So it is important. I looked at it when I went through this verse a number of times. Then I said that what else is implicit in this verse? And we need to look at these verses in the light of what is happening around us in the world of 2024. And we will find that there is far more into it than what is normally written down in translations. Here the verse has noted, فَيُغْرِقَكُمْ بِمَا كَفَرْتُمْ, i.e. become destroyed through drowning due to ignoring the laws of Allah. This kufr is not only applicable in the physical domain, the biggest kufr is in the domain of ourself. We know all of us are going to physically disappear as per the law of Allah, but most do not think seriously about this. Why do human beings do this? And that is important, because if we are just concerned of going from one place to another without paying any attention that what laws of Allah are making it go, how did human beings design and construct all these liners, all these ships, and the way these are now operating on the surface of various oceans, then we are essentially not paying attention as human beings. We are just with a shut mind going from one place to another, and Quran wants us to think about it so that our vision keeps expanding. Continuing with this verse, human beings want quick results as they assume their life will end with death. All those laws, natural and man-made, which assist in acquiring immediate benefits, we know these well and have no problem in obeying these, and in the process ignore self-development. And we can see that how many human beings, they really look at the aspect of self-development. If you ask them, oh, I had a great time on these holidays. But if we ask them that, what do you mean by that great time? And you will see that self-development will not be included in that. Whereas by following the Quranic permanent values, we also benefit from recognizing the man-made systems and their pitfalls. For example, by not driving fast to reach a destination quicker, we plan well in time and drive within the speed limit in order to ensure that we reach our destination safely, and value our physical life so that we can keep working for the system of Deen. And that is important as students of the Quran, that whatever we do, we should know the consequences and any ill effects, possible ill effects or side effects of it as well. Cutting short our stay in this life means a less developed self. It is that simple. Then the verse concludes by stating, Summa la tajidu lakum alayna behi tabiya. Then you will find no helper therein against us. The law of requital of Allah meets us when the cumulative outcomes of our deeds reach their minimum threshold. This is also called, for example, in 13.2, Bilaqai Rabbikum tuqinun, that you have certainty in the meeting with your Rabb. A meeting with your Rabb is not about physically meeting, but when we follow his laws, we are actually in contact with him, because that is the way we should look at whatever is going around us. When we see the evidence of the functioning of the laws of Allah, it is termed as meeting with him. A developed self presents itself as evidence of the functioning of the permanent values, and all this is clearly signposted by the Quran. And being aware of these things is a sign in itself that we are fully conscious of what we are doing in our daily lives. And it should not cause any stress to us, but this is the way we educate and train ourselves. This is the way we orientate our direction towards the higher purpose of life. Now we come to the last verse of today's presentation, 1770. Universal recognition of human respect and dignity is the basis for the system of Deen. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَرَزَقْنَاهُمْ مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. These physical forces which are operating in the universe happen to be very immense and severe, but we have granted superiority to man over all of them. We have created all the children of Adam as deserving of respect and dignity, and provided them with that knowledge of the physical laws on the basis of which they can harness all the powers on land and sea, and in this way obtain very pleasant means of sustenance for themselves. The truth is that we have given man a superior status and supremacy over the majority of our creations. There are a number of points in this, and so we will go through them in some detail next. Word created for man for finite physical existence. And we can see this whole planet is placed at our disposal, and sun to make the life possible on planet. And we can see water as well, and a moon as well. So this is a pretty exciting place. So a lot of thought has gone into this creation of man and its abode on this planet Earth. And all of these human beings, though they are physical beings, but they also have a self, and that self needs development. And human beings have been given a very carefully planned and designed brain and nervous system. And if we look at its functioning, it's amazing. And a lot of work has been done recently on, for example, on the right and left hemisphere of our brain. It's worth going through that, and we can Google it. Shown both paths of life. So human beings are created, put on this planet, sun created, moon created for them to please them and to direct them to a higher purpose of life, given a very powerful brain and then shown both paths of life, that is, Iman or Kufr, should make efforts to create in physical and non-physical domains. So enough resources are provided to man so that it can create further on this planet and create peace and harmony, not create fasad. And then all of us die, and here is a cemetery for that. But the important thing is life at self's level continues. And that is important, that if this thing is missing from our life and we think once we are buried or cremated, that is the end of our life, then we are mistaken, and we should be ready for a big surprise after our death. Now, verse 1770 over here, what I've done is I have outlined some salient characteristics of this root karam. Al-Karam is that attribute which is the opposite of meanness, carrying out such a responsibility which protects the blood and life of a nation, i.e. spending on very valuable and welfare-oriented tasks and efforts, providing benefit to someone selflessly and without any personal motive. It also means sincerity, and there are a few more aspects. So what is noted over here is that all of these aspects are built within us, within ourselves. So we have these as our latent potentials. Providing benefit to someone in which there is no iota of humiliation and degradation. Together with this, the benefit should lead to eminence and loftiness. Among Arabs, Al-Karim was such a comprehensive attribute in which every kind of benefit, eminence, and virtuousness is included. It is applied to someone who does not have any negative characteristic. A lot of effort required and a lot of high level of consciousness we need. Al-Karim also means independent and gentlemanly, noble, generous, well-mannered, who keeps himself protected from the disobedience of the commands of Allah. And all of these attributes we have to create within us. We have latent potentials, but those are raw. And we went through some of these aspects under Shaitan and Iblis. Kareem is also related to plentiful rain, fertile land yielding abundant crops. According to Raghib, no person can be called Kareem until Karm is not displayed by him. In relation to sustenance, with respect and dignity, that is no humiliation attached to it, and it is plentiful, the Quran has used the term Rizqan Kareem. This can only be possible under the system of deen, that is this world plus the hereafter. So the system of deen includes the physical side as well as the development of the self, at which level we have Iman in the hereafter. And for further details, we should see Lughatul Quran by Allama Parvez. From Lughatul Quran, what I've done over here is that there were few paragraphs given in Lughatul Quran. I just translated them and the thought to share it in this presentation. We have created all the children of Adam worthy of respect because they possess karm. They have all these latent potentials. We should remember that these latent potentials do not manifest unless we make an effort for that. I.e., Allah has made every child of Adam deserving of al-takreem due to being human. This supreme declaration is made from the direction of the Quran for the first time. Every person is bestowed with respect and eminence as a fundamental right from the court of the Quran. It is the right of a human being by birth. After this, the ranks for further respect and eminence are established based on personal attributes and righteous deeds. Whoever takes care of the laws of Allah, he becomes worthy of takreem to the same extent. So over and above that takreem with which we are born, we can add to that takreem by following the laws of Allah and through the guidance of the Quran. So much so that the one who observes these laws most becomes deserving of greater loftiness and eminence. And this loftiness and eminence does not mean some kind of a physical status, not at all. It means that they are able to do far more good in the world than others who have less of it. Just reflect how the Quran has changed ancient standards of race, family, possessions, wealth, etc., and in their place provided new standards for loftiness and eminence, according to which a man, simply by being human, becomes deserving of respect. This means the criterion for respect became personal character, not relative standards. With this one single criterion, all false symbols of royalty, religions, capitalism become eliminated completely, i.e., every human child, whether born in the house of a king or a pauper, whether the son of a Brahmin or carpenter, being human is deserving the same takreem. And these things will disappear under the system of deen. But under the man-made system, what is noted over here is just to pay attention to it, that what is going on around our world. For example, a head of a state is given a red carpet treatment. An ordinary human being who is homeless is sitting on the side of a road and is begging and looking for some help all the time. So both are human beings. And that one who is on the red carpet, he is the cause of this homelessness. And that is the way we should analyze it and analytically look at it. If we are comfortable with these red carpet treatment and the homeless people, then essentially Quran is not for us. Quran is taking us out of that mess, that mud which human beings create, and then try to create a world which is worthy of eminence for every human being. Expanding it further, this verse 1770, for the students of the Quran, this is not meant to be accepted mechanically. For example, it is written in the Constitution that all human beings are equal and deserving of respect and dignity. So these kind of words we see in virtually in different constitutions of different countries, and all of these are meaningless. Article 1 of, for example, of UN Human Rights states all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. And we can see what is going on, for example, in Palestine. Here the Quran is asking us to accept this as a fact based on evidence and by relating our own self to the self of every human being, as all of them are created by that Allah in whom we have accepted Iman. This Iman makes us a willing companion to carry out all those duties and responsibilities which Allah has noted down for us and with which development of our self is linked. And that is important. As students of the Quran, we have to go through these verses a number of times and try to come to terms with our own creation and its importance and our own respect and dignity vis-a-vis others. So huge responsibility comes in direction, but that responsibility we should not be scared to take on. We should not be scared to accept, because there is a lot of pleasure attached with this responsibility as well. We are endowed with intellect and emotion so that we can create a new self which comprehends aspects related to human beings, sentiments, proclivities, biases, vulnerabilities, sensitivities, apprehensions, fears, anxieties, uncertainties, insecurities. I tried to put down as much I could remember, and I thought for posterity this should be put down. This should be noted over here in this slide, so that we value every human being as the possessor of all of these sensitivities with which he is born, and to not leave him or her to the mercy of man-made systems. The first stage is to understand all this willingly, not mechanically. Because if we accept these mechanically, then we are not going to be of much help to the system of deen. Over here, Quran wants to transform our thought process voluntarily through our own inner volition, through our own choice. And that is where the self will develop. Mechanically accepting these things, the self will never develop. Continuing on this verse, why did Allah keep all these emotions related to humiliation, shame, embarrassment, hopelessness, depression, isolation, loneliness, inferiority complexes, psychological aches and pains, and we can add more to it, within each one of us? And that is an important question for us. These are invisible but need to be recognized and then addressed. The Quran is asking the mu'mineen to do it. That is, the mu'mineen must first recognize all of these within themselves and then develop those feelings that how will I feel if I become hopeless? How will I feel if I feel depressed, isolated, feel loneliness or being humiliated? And then start to think to do something about it. And then we will see how this verse, Laqad karamna bani Adama, manifests itself right in front of us. When the Quran declares Walakad karamna bani Adama, it leaves no doubt in our minds that what is being noted here is an evidence-based fact. And then how to verify it. Why it is evidence-based fact? Because each one of us has this. Each one of us feels like that. We all want others to respect us, to know our feelings, to help us when we are down, to create a system in which no human being feels lonely, no human being feels yatim and miskeen. So that is why, that is where we should concentrate. And then how to verify it? By checking your own psyche and bringing to mind all those feelings and emotions related to your own respect and dignity. So from today's presentation, what we should do is that we should note these things as and when these arise within us and these arise in others. And we should help our children to manifest these as well, to become aware of it. We should let them know that all the children in the world are just like them. This means never to transgress the laws of Allah, even if he has committed a crime. This means to avoid any abuse, torture, whether physical or through words. Look at the circumstances and environment in the society and the world which has contributed to forming the character of every person, and then compare it to what the system of Deen will do and help to create a new world. This is an uphill task, but Mu'mineen are never alone in this task of theirs. Continuing on this verse, next the verse states, وَحَمَلْنَهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَرَزَقْنَهُمْ مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ. Pointing to the carefully planned physical aspects of the earth, it is said that mankind is provided with transport on land and sea, provided with the means of sustenance good and pure. All this adds to their choices so that they choose whatever they like and find wholesome and healthy. So part of our self-development process is that we should also appreciate that to what extent Allah has gone to create a beautiful world for us with all its resources, and then given us that self which has the capacity and the ability to go into an eternal life. Seeing the extensive development and progress in the means of transport by employing the resources of the earth, if we wish to manage the equitable distribution of risk across the globe, and we should remember that risk, its meanings include that it must be ample and it should be available wherever it is required. It should not be parachuted down like in Palestine and given as charity. Charity is the worst thing which human beings can do to other human beings, because it includes the element of disgrace and humiliation in it. This is not at all difficult. We need the desire and will to do this. This is only possible through Deen. By not meeting the basic physical needs of human beings, we have humiliated and degraded the children of Adam on a continuous basis across the globe, and the man-made system does not even think about it. This includes the so-called custodians of the Quran who speed read these verses, for example, during the month of Ramadan. And we can see in the prayers of Taraweeh that this how the Quran is treated. They just go through it, including this verse, and nobody pauses and reflects on it. And we have seen now that how much, even with a little effort, is coming out of these verses for our benefit. Continue with more reflections on this verse. Then the verse concludes by directing our attention to another very important aspect in terms of our status as a special creation of Allah in this universe and of His. وَفَضَّلْنَهُمْ عَلَىٰ كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. And it is translated as, and conferred on them special favors above a great part of our creation. It is very mechanical the way these things are translated, and all those feelings which are implicit in these, which we are supposed to pick those up, which Allah wants us to pick those up through ourselves, through our thinking, are missing. And that is why when people read these translations, it doesn't have any impact on them. If this part of the verse is related to the known creation on the planet, then it will mean that though man appears to be not much more than an animal, the fact that he possesses choice and intent and has a self with an I within him, with countless latent potentials, hence he is far more than the sum total of his constituents, is something on which we should pay attention, that all of us are far, far bigger than what we physically are. It is our thoughts, our intellect, which gives us that significance where we acquire a new self within us. Other animals on the planet simply cannot understand what is noted in this part of the verse. He can degrade himself as well as elevate himself through this choice. For example, Quran has stated, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. We have gone through this surah previously, created with those potentials which can help put him on Sirat al-Mustaqim. This can help him to acquire وَإِنَّكَ لَا عَلَىٰ خُلْقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Though this verse is directed towards the messenger of Allah, but Quran doesn't say that we cannot acquire those characteristics. It essentially means that if you follow the Quran, you can become Khulq Azim. And you are, O Rasool, standing on an exalted standard of character. Now, continuing this verse further, is the Quran trying to impress us and entice us towards doing good? Not at all. Because if we start thinking that what Quran is asking us is as if Allah wants to do us some favor, the issue before us is that we are created for a higher purpose, but we have a choice whether we want to acquire that higher, we want to set that high goal for us and in the process acquire new life and then justify our own existence and then go on to develop further, or just we want to live at an animalistic level and then die and disappear. Allah is far beyond these kind of human thoughts and proclivities. So we should look at the Quran as the focus of we ourselves being the focus of its attention. And that is why Quran has called it as a zikr for us. And that is why it is important that when we are going through these verses, we do not look at these translations, which are very much written from the perspective of religion. This whole Quran is giving us a very lofty and eminent existence in case we follow it. And of course, we will be helped. We will get the help of Allah's laws to establish the system of deen. The only thing is that we have to have a firm iman in it. A very important aspect related to human character is noted here when we relate this to what we have covered under the cream. The Quran is asking us to look at our potentials, which, when they are turned into abilities using the permanent values of the Quran, result in a new kind of self with new life emerging, which becomes another kind of creation, possessing the acquired ability and capacity to turn this word into that word intended to take shape for which the universe is created. So what this verse is saying is that we will only think of being higher than other creation is when we fulfill the purpose of our creation by creating a new self. If we live at an animalistic level, then in fact, Quran has declared us to be lower than animals because we have failed to bring out our best. This new creation of human beings called Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen will be superior to the creation which is addressed here. Here there is another interesting point to which the Quran is drawing our attention, i.e. the universe is mentioned in many verses. While we know we are confined to this earth due to our physical body, however, at the level of our thoughts, we do gain access to the far-off recesses of the universe, and this creates curiosity within us to have access to this part of Allah's creation. Important point that if we stretch it a bit more, we will see that the abilities which are given to us at self's level through our intellect, this makes us free from our physical existence. While we are living this life at a physical level in this planet, but we can think much beyond it. And we can also look beyond our death as well. Concluding remarks on this verse, By acquiring a developed self working for the system of deen, the Quran places the universe within our reach by stating, Lahum ma yasha'una fiha wala daina mazid. This verse, we should remember it by heart and keep it in mind when we are particularly down and we think that not much progress is being made on the system towards the system of deen. There will be for them therein all that they wish. So if we strongly wish for the system of deen and then keep working on this path, then our wish should materialize right in this life. And more besides in our presence. Here is the direction for us to formulate our desires. Hope we can perceive the pleasure of this. The Quran invites us to think beyond the realm of our physical death and tells us that at self's level we just taste death. Kullu nafsin zaiqatul maut. It also means we experience death. And experience means that we move on to the next. So at a self's level, Quran has very clearly told us that this self cannot die with body. Every self is to taste death. This is not something which we should accept mechanically, as happens in the domain of religious beliefs, where people do mention the life of the hereafter, but their conduct never changes to meet the criteria laid down by the Quran. Because it should bring change within us through solid deeds by coming together and then keep together on this path with this firm belief that deen will get established. Let us do our bit of understanding the Quran first and turning our psyche into that psyche which can establish the system of deen. The establishment of the system of deen is never an aim under religious domains. Hence, in this verse, we need to stretch our thinking beyond our physical existence and look at the possibilities which exist within the system of deen at the level of human self and exploring the good kept within its folds. Not merely accepting what is noted in فَفَضَّلْنَا عَلَىٰ كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا, but need to explore it further to prove that we are definitely deserving of this status accorded by the Quran and create a world worthy of living for whole of mankind under the permanent values. Because we have to prove it to ourselves that we can follow the Quran, and then with this obedience we can create a new world for which we are created and placed on this planet, and for which Allah has created sun, moon, water, and everything which we see around us. Creating the desire of this is just the beginning of this process of seeking guidance from the Quran. With that, we come to the end. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of deen.